Welcome back to Joe Stunner Boxing. I made a video a few days ago saying that I didn't feel that Ryan Garcia is a welterweight. I still think that with the right dietitian, strength and conditioning, he could probably still make 140. And do I know that for certain? Of course not. None of us do unless we have inside information, and I have none. But it does strike me that if he was disciplined, if he'd been as disciplined, say, as Devin Haney, he would have made that 140 mark, and it would have been a fairer fight. Now, a lot of people have said, "Oh, how can you say that he can make it? He was three pounds 2 ounces over, and clearly he can't make 140 anymore." Well, not making it and being able to make it are two different things. Choosing not to make it is different to not being able to make it. But they were also, the people that commented were also tying in this idea that the 3.2 pounds had an effect on the fight itself. Now that I absolutely agree with. Absolutely. They're confusing the two issues, some of these people were. There is no doubt that 3 pounds 2 ounces benefited Ryan Garcia greatly against Haney. And in fact, you could argue that Garcia and his team used Haney's professionalism against him. You could say that because Haney comes across as being I'm a professional, I make weight, I don't care what you're doing, blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, that's all very noble, but if you let someone get away with bending the rules or even flat out breaking them, it can come back to bite you in the backside. And it clearly did, I think, for Haney, because there is no doubt that if you've ever tried to make weight, and I don't believe that Garcia lives the life. Clearly he doesn't. I mean, he drinks alcohol, he smokes weed, he probably eats whatever he wants, and he relies on burning it off in the gym. Again, that's not a case of that's his choice. That's not something that he can't stop. He could stop doing it. But having put on a certain amount of weight between fights, he probably thought, I can't get down to 140 comfortably and retain my strength, so the hell with it. He even paid Devin, I think, $1.5 million for not being able to make the weight. It was a handshake agreement, and apparently Ryan honoured it. Fair play to him for that, but it was certainly worth the 1.5 million when you consider the results and the riches that lie in wait for Ryan in the future. But if you've ever struggled, if you've ever had to make a certain weight, you will know that everyone has their optimum weight. Everyone has their optimum weight division, and you can't continually boil yourself down and retain retain strength and retain energy, unless it is a healthy optimum weight for you. Now, if you go back to the 80s and 90s, I remember vividly, you would get a lot of these Thai fighters, some Japanese, Filipinos, who would, just starve themselves. They had to be helped onto the scales because they were fighting at weights that were dangerously too light for them. Okay, now that's taking it to the ridiculous extreme. This is why I think there is a healthy balance to be had here. This is why when a fighter says, I can't make the weight, that may be the case, but you have to say, well, how are you trying to make the weight? These guys were in saunas. I mean, their bodies were essentially breaking down. The muscle was being burnt off, and it was horrendous stuff. I mean, I literally remember fights. I think there was a Thai, I can't remember who it was. He was actually carried onto the scales and then carried off them. I'm going back to the early 90s. I wish I could remember the name of the fighter, but I remember looking at this. I had this on an old VHS tape. I'm thinking, what the hell is going on here? No, they fought? Because in those days, before the internet, you had to really read up on everything, and you had to, if you wanted to watch anything, you had to get the old VHS tapes out the back of Boxing News or Boxing Monthly. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, and they allowed it. That's the one good thing about the internet, where every bit of news is put out there and goes viral, as they say, instantly, because people can't get away with things like that anymore, or they can try to. But recently there was an example in Ghana of a complete robbery of a guy who was knocked flat, absolutely knocked stone cold flat, and was given a draw for some completely unfathomable reason, that instantly went viral, and I did a video on it. That would have been brushed under the carpet in the old days. And so it is with things like making weight. Now, the thing about Garcia was he and his team were open about it. Yeah, I can make weight. Oh dear, I'm 3 pounds, 2 ounces over. Never mind, I'll tell you what, we'll cut a deal. The mistake Haney made was saying, yeah, all right, we'll cut a deal. Why was there no rehydration clause afterwards? You've got to ask all these questions about how Haney's team approached this fight, especially when they realised that Ryan, whether you feel he was trolling or not, was not in the most stable of places. And I still say, as I said in previous videos, it does not necessarily follow that because Ryan beat Devin and because he looked excellent doing it, that he's mentally okay outside the ring or emotionally okay. In fact, he said post-fight, I do things randomly because I've got ADHD. He stated it almost as a fact. Well, it is a fact, I suppose. That doesn't necessarily say that this guy is the most stable of people, So Devin should have, it's all very well saying, I do what I want, you can do whatever the hell you want. I'm a consummate professional. You've got to keep an eye on the other guy, because burning off that last few pounds can be agony. And Devin did, during the weigh-in, he did look a little bit gaunt in the face. His eyes were a little bit sunken. How he made 135, I just don't know. I suspect, and again, this is only a guess. Don't beat me up for saying this. I'm just chewing the fat here. But I think all those, those certainly the last 2 years of making 135, and going for that undisputed title may have depleted his body to the point where even if he does move up, okay, it'll make life easier. But if either of these two fighters is a 147 pounder, I'd say it's more likely to be Devin Haney. I'd say Ryan, I would imagine Ryan made 143 without too much trouble. He looked fit, he looked okay, he looked cut and everything. But at 147, that might be a bridge too far for him. Maybe if he was more disciplined, he could get down to 140 easier than Devin Haney did it. It's difficult to say because, again, I don't have any inside information. But I do feel that Devin, boiling himself down to 140, living the life, making all the sacrifices, and Ryan coming in almost casually and saying, yep, I'm overweight, sorry about that. Yeah, I'll agree. Here's your $1.5 million, no problem. I'm going to honour the bet. We shook hands. I'm going to honour the bet. I think Team Garcia played Team Haney like mugs, to be honest with you, because taking that last couple of pounds off, if you're struggling, is agony, absolute agony. You are in saunas. You're not meant to do that in the UK, but things get done, don't they? Certainly in other countries, you are allowed to do it. Go into a sauna, burn off that few pounds, don't eat for 2 days, don't drink for a day sometimes. It's horrendous stuff. And it's extremely dangerous. The old fluid in the brain, that the brain obviously sits in its cerebral fluid inside the skull, that gets drained off. Therefore, when you get into the ring, your brain is rattling around like a coin in a box. And that's how you get brain bleeds. All this stuff, I'm probably not telling you anything you don't know, but all this stuff can be extremely dangerous. And for one guy to go in there having risked that, I'm not saying Haney was in that bad a position, but having risked it, and for the other guy not to, clearly it was an advantage to Garcia. Clearly, very clearly. But that's a different subject to whether he can still make 140. Definitely a different subject. Anyway, if you've got any thoughts on this subject, I know other people have done some pretty good videos on the same subject, and there are people out there who know more about neurology and strength and conditioning than I do. Lee at Inside the Distance, he knows a lot about this. He did a very, very good video on this very subject. Go and check it out. Inside the Distance Boxing, very good video. But yeah, if you've got anything you want to say, comments below as always, and I'll answer them. I'll have a read of them, and please subscribe to the channel if you're new, hit the like button and spread the word about Joe Stunner Boxing. I always appreciate your time, and I will speak to you soon. Bye for now.